Hey everyone, today we're jumping right into the brain of your network security, FortiGate Firewall policies. If you think of your firewall as a security guard, the policy list is its complete set of instructions. It's the rulebook that tells it exactly what to do. So let's get right in and see how it all works.
So what's the secret sauce? How does a firewall make those split-second decisions? How does it know that you going to a trusted website is fine, but some random, sketchy connection from the internet needs to be shut down immediately? Well, it all comes down to the policy list.
Honestly, the best way to picture this is to think of a bouncer at a really exclusive club. That bouncer's got a list, right? And they check every single person trying to get in against that list. Your firewall policy is exactly that, but for your network's data. It's a very strict set of rules that decides who gets in, who gets turned away, and what they can do once they're inside.
Okay, so this is how that bouncer thinks, and the logic is super simple but incredibly important. The FortiGate reads its list from the top down, one rule at a time. When a new connection tries to come through, it checks rule number 1. Does it match? If yep, it does what the rule says, accept or deny, and that's it. The process stops. First match wins. If it's not a match, it just moves on to rule 2, then rule 3, and so on. But what if it gets all the way to the end of the list and finds no match? This is the most important rule of all, the implicit deny. Any traffic that isn't specifically allowed by a rule is automatically dropped, period. All right, so now that we get that top-down logic, let's actually build a rule. What are the essential pieces we need to put together for that bouncer's list?
Every single policy you create is really just you answering these basic questions. Where's the traffic coming from, and where's it trying to go? That's your incoming and outgoing interfaces. Who's sending it? That's the source. Where's it headed? That's the destination. When should this rule even be active? That's the schedule. What kind of traffic is it? Web, email? That's the service. And then the final decision. Do we accept it or do we deny it? Now, of all those building blocks, there's one that is absolutely non-negotiable. The source. I mean, think about it. How can you make a rule if you don't even know who the rule is for? The FortiGate makes you define where the traffic is coming from. It's the first and most critical piece of the puzzle. And you've got a ton of flexibility here. You can get really specific and say it's just this one block of IP addresses. Or you could use a website address. You can even go super broad and say all traffic coming from Canada, for example. Or you can get clever and tie it to specific user groups, like saying this rule only applies to people in the marketing team. Now, when you're defining the source or destination, you have two really powerful options. You can use those standard address objects we just talked about, or you can use something called the Internet Service Database, the ISDB. This is this huge, constantly updated list from FortiGuard that knows all the IP addresses for services like Office 365 or Dropbox. Now, here's the crucial point. In a single rule, you have to pick one. You can use address objects, or you can use an ISDB entry, but you can't mix and match them in the same field. Okay, great. So we know how to let traffic in or keep it out based on its address label. But what about the stuff inside that traffic? Let's level up and add some security superpowers. This is where security profiles come into play. So if your firewall policy is the bouncer checking IDs at the door, think of security profiles as the extra guards inside, who are actually looking inside people's bags. For any traffic you decide to accept, you can then tell these profiles to scan it for viruses, block it from going to bad websites, control which apps people can use, or even stop sensitive company data from being sent out. And this brings up a really practical choice you have to make with logging. By default, when you use security profiles, your logging is set to security events. This is great because it's efficient. It only bothers to create a log if it actually finds a threat. Keeps things quiet. But if you're trying to figure out why something isn't working, you might need to flip that switch to all sessions. It's going to log every single connection, which is amazing for troubleshooting, but be warned, it can get very, very noisy. So, building one rule. Pretty straightforward. But a real firewall has dozens, maybe hundreds of rules. So let's zoom out and talk about how to manage the whole list without going crazy. So here's something that I'll admit is a little confusing at first. We know that top-to-bottom order is everything when it comes to processing traffic. So why does every single policy also have this unique ID number that never, ever changes? The answer is they have two completely different jobs. Think of it this way. The order is its position in the line at the club. That's what the bouncer, the firewall, uses to process everyone. And it changes every time you drag a rule up or down. The ID, on the other hand, is like its permanent name tag. It's assigned once and it sticks with that rule forever. That ID is what you'll see in log files, so you always know exactly which rule you're dealing with, no matter where it gets moved in the line. Now, to help you see what's going on, the FortiGate gives you two main ways to look at your list. The default is interface pair view, which is nice and organized. It groups policies based on the networks they connect, so it's good for seeing the general flow. But if you want to see the pure, unfiltered, top-to-bottom truth of how the firewall processes rules, you need by sequence view. It shows you one single list in the exact order it's checked. This view is absolutely essential for serious troubleshooting. All right, here's a random little fact for you that's actually super important. 35. That's the character limit for the names of most things you create on the firewall. And while that might seem kind of annoying, it's actually a blessing in disguise. It forces you to be disciplined and come up with a clear, short naming system right from the start. Trust me, that's a habit that will save you so many headaches later on. Okay, we've covered the what and the how. For this last section, let's dive into some pro tips that will take your firewall rules from just working to expert level. It really boils down to three core ideas. First, be specific. So specific. Avoid using any or all unless you have a really, really good reason. The tighter your rule, the more secure you are. Second, name things clearly. Come up with a system and stick to it. The one on the screen is a great example. And third, and this is a big one, remember that changes on a FortiGate are live the second you hit save. So always, always test your changes before you push them out during business hours. Now, speaking of testing, there's this amazing built-in tool called the policy lookup. You can literally think of it as a traffic simulator. You plug in the details of a connection, like a source IP, a destination, a port, and the FortiGate will tell you exactly which policy that traffic would hit, all without sending a single packet on the real network. It's awesome. And this is why it's your best friend for troubleshooting. When a user comes to you and says, "Hey, I can't get to this website," you don't have to guess anymore. You just pop their details into the policy lookup. It'll tell you instantly if they're hitting a deny rule, or maybe they're not matching any rule at all and are getting dropped by that implicit deny at the very end. Look, if you only take one single thing away from all of this, let it be this right here. This is the golden rule of firewall management. Don't create a massive, wide-open rule just because it's easier in the moment. Define exactly what needs to be allowed, and by default, deny everything else. Your network will be so much safer for it. And this really shows that managing your policies is a job that's never truly done. If you look at any firewall that's been running for a while, you're going to find rules that are way too broad, rules that are for old servers that don't even exist anymore, and rules with confusing names. The goal isn't perfection on day one, it's a constant process of making things better. And that really is the bottom line. Your business changes, your ops change, and the threats out there are definitely changing. So you have to treat your policy list like a living document. Going in there and cleaning things up regularly isn't just about being tidy, it's a core part of keeping your security strong. So now you have the playbook for building and managing policies like a pro. The real question is, what are you going to do with it? Your policies are working for you right now, but are they as clean, as specific, and as secure as they could be? What's the one rule you're going to go back and take a look at first?